Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Hey. Hope you're doing well. Karl Bryan coming at you. I'm here without my boy Road Dogg. He has got some commitments with his daughter, who's an elite soccer player. So I told my boy that I would handle it. Anywho, hope you're doing good. Going to get into it. I got a few questions from Road Dogg. And actually, before I get started, last week, somebody spoke to me and they were asking me about something I said on the podcast, and I made an error. So I apologize. But anyways, I was talking about this 10-10 frame where you spend, when you meet somebody, you've got to spend a percentage of the time in a elevated frame. And then you've got to spend a period of time in a low, so let's say an upper frame, and then in a good percentage of the time in a lower frame. And then you've got to spend a good portion of time in an equal frame, right? So you've got upper, lower, and then equal. What I said is I said 80% in the lower, and no doubt you would have picked this up, or I would hope you would have, but you spend again, arbitrary numbers here, really, if you think about it, but you're spending 10% of your time in an upper frame, okay, where you're taking control. But see, that's obvious. But the problem is when you meet a $10 million company, a $25 million company, or that level of entrepreneur, and you haven't created and built yourself a $10 million company, $25 million company, it might be uncomfortable to come over the top of them. But if you don't come over the top of them, guess what? They're never going to hire you as their mentor. And then, notwithstanding, if you meet somebody who's got like $100,000 business gross revenues, and you've built a significantly bigger business than that, it'll be very comfortable for you to take the higher frame, and that will happen organically. Well, the problem is people don't want to get talked down to. So anyway, so you spend 10% of your time in the higher, 10% of your time in the lower, and then 80% of your time in the equal. And then I had said 80% of the time in lower or higher. Okay, which clearly a mistake, but hopefully you would have picked up on that. But anyways, just want to clear that up. Okay, I got some questions here from Road Dogg. What's the first one? He says, I know we ask this all the time, and guessing answer won't change much, but where are the best clients to get right now? Where's the best, he's got a bit of his grammar's not great here. Where are the best places to get clients right now? We've got a few questions and just address it quick. Okay. So he is correct. We've answered this one a lot, but at the end of the day, I don't think you can do this enough, because at the end of the day, if you're going to build your coaching company, you've got lead gen, conversion, and fulfillment. You got to keep that hopper full. You've always got to be out there meeting new people, right? Where do you do that? Higher level frame, your best client is always going to be you 5 years ago. Okay, so what were you doing 5 years ago? And I'm going to tell you what your ideal client looks like. Only second best to you 10 years ago, but most people haven't done, a single thing for 10 consecutive years. But if you have, those clients are going to be even more ideal for you. So your best client is you in the past, you 5 years ago. Real simple. He is correct. The answer's not going to change. Look, companies advertising. You got mailers, you got an online directory. Go to the baseball stadium and there's advertising on the home run fence. You go to the hockey rink and there's advertising. You go to the washroom, there's advertising. You go to the cafe and there's advertising. You drive down the road and there's advertising on the side of the road. You listen to the radio, there's advertising over the radio. You get the old school newspaper, there's people advertising. You get the old school magazine, there's people advertising. You go to the local coupon book, there's people advertising. Facebook, online, etc. So at the end of the day, anybody advertising, they're whipping out their credit cards, trying to grow their company, probably not working very well. You've got a problem there that you can solve, and that's a good client. But at the end of the day, they're writing, using their credit card to try to grow their business. That's a great client. Businesses for sale, 80% of them, if not significantly more, are not going to sell. Why? Not profitable, not systematized, and too owner reliant. Help them solve that problem, and all of a sudden they're going to have an exitable business. But as it stands right now, there's a good chance they're just wasting money, time, and quite frankly, more importantly, the energy and the focus. But businesses for sale, businesses that were nominated for local awards. There's all kinds of local awards. If you get a little bit creative, you're going to be able to find them. Often run by the companies that I just mentioned, like, the advertising companies. Members of the Chamber of Commerce, members of places like BNI and networking. Also, remember, new members are going to be better than 3-year-old members. Hopefully that's obvious, but you want to get them early. Sponsorships. There's people sponsoring the local golf course. There's people sponsoring the local volleyball team. There's people sponsoring the local basketball team. The school's newsletters got all kinds of sponsorship, etc. The school does. These businesses are out there promoting, and they've obviously got a few extra bucks because they're promoting something that may or may not be working. These are good. New business registry. My dad sold advertising for literally decades. And one of the most important things he would do is he'd go through and highlight the new businesses advertising and the new businesses registered. Translation, kind of said it a minute ago, but you want to catch them early. Look, do you want to coach do you want to train a puppy or a 3-year-old dog? Right? Probably obvious. You're looking for new businesses, get them early. That can be an advantage. Is that, critical? Absolutely not, but can be a good client. Joint ventures, you definitely want to be forming some joint venture. You go to the banker, you go to the accountant, you go to the advertising salespeople, you go to the promotional businesses, you go to the website designer, the graphic designer, the business broker, any B2B offering. I think a little bit outside the box, like if dentists were your niche, the question is, who is selling to dentists? Somebody's got to sell them the toothpaste, the toothbrushes, the equipment, the chairs, etc. Well, go to them. You go to chiropractors, or somebody that's selling all the equipment and the tables to chiropractors, well, go to them. Anybody going B2B is a joint venture opportunity. And again, going to the obvious accountant, maybe, again, think outside the box, because you and everybody else is going to the accountant. If you can build that relationship, it can be pure gold, but it can be a little bit harder than, maybe the one I just described, like kind of the person selling to the dentist. Did I say network? I think, look, going to networking events, right? BNI, and then there's going to be a higher level networking at the golf club. There's going to be higher level networking at the private school. There's going to be higher level networking at something like the oil and gas club, the nonprofit, the yacht club, etc. So again, getting out there, shaking hands, kissing babies, and doing the networking. Do live events consistently. Again, if I started my business coaching company, I've said this for years and I'll continue to say it, I would do a weekly live event. And by the way, it would be tough for me to get going, and it's going to be tough for you to get going. But what happens is you build authority, you build up your referral base, you build up your reputation, you build up some magic through the consistency and the discipline of keeping them going. And remember the hype. Like when I did a local live event, my primary goal wasn't to get clients and wasn't to get meetings. It was to get 2 referrals per person. And I felt like if I did a good enough job that I got 2 referrals per person in the room, I would certainly be doing a good enough job to be able to set up some appointments and get some coaching clients, which absolutely happen. But what's the hardest thing for me to do if I'm doing a weekly event? What's the hardest thing for you to do if you're doing a weekly event? And that is fill the next damn event. So by collecting, by getting those referrals and making that your focus, and explicitly stating it in the event. My goal is to get 2 referrals for you and do a good enough job that happens. Well, guess what ends up happening? That's what happens. I'd be looking at websites and help them create, a better way. We got a 4-step operating system. You got to interrupt, you got to engage, you got to educate, you got to offer. If I go to the average website, what does it look like? It's got the name of the company at the top. It's got service, quality, dependability in the middle. and then phone number and whatever else on the bottom, right? That's just a blown up business card. That is not compelling. When I go to their website and I'm looking at what it says, the question is, can all of the competitors say the same thing? And they're going to be able to say great service. They're going to be able to say, super dependable. They're going to be able to say high quality products. They're going to say professionals are going to show up. Everybody can say that. So it doesn't set them apart. They need to be somewhat compelling. And by the way, if they don't have an offer, that is just not a good dynamic, right? Like, let's say you had like a contracting company. Like, what if the top of their website said something like, most remodelers hate dealing with high maintenance customers who complain about wanting every little thing a certain way. That's interrupt. Engage. Those are the only kind I get along with. Okay. And then you would educate. Okay. 3 things that they need to, just some educational copy. Hopefully that's pretty obvious. And then there needs to be an offer, right? And rather than 10% discount, phone call, what about like a free design portfolio or something to that effect, right? What if it, if you pay $50,000 for a new bathroom and are 100% thrilled with the results, don't come crying to me, right? Interrupt, engage, because there's 0% chance that I did the job. Okay. And then interrupt, that's the engage. And then you educate them. And then you have a compelling offer of some description, like a guide, the 3 mistakes people make when hiring a contractor, something to that effect. But anyway, so you want to have interrupt, engage, educate, offer. Not everybody is going to be able to say something as compelling as that. And by the way, is that going to stand out a little bit? I would dare say. And this think you got a personal trainer, you've got whatever it is, they use language along those lines and just a little bit more powerful. But anywho, so that's how I would help somebody build a killer website. Okay. Okay. So he's going to follow up to this. So he said, so coaches and consultants are meeting business owners through the lead gen. And obviously the coaches want to impress them. And he's put impress them in quotation. What's an example of how to impress them? Okay. Well, remember, you want to be interesting. You should be interested and interesting, but it's very important that you're interesting. My question is, when you go to the networking function, you go to the golf club, you go to these events that I mentioned earlier, when you meet people, does it feel like kind of vanilla conversations? I would dare say yes, right? And ones that aren't vanilla tend to stand out a little bit. And those are the ones that you remember, right? Those are the people that, feel in order to be valuable, you got to be memorable, right? You want to be memorable. So what I would say there is a higher level frame, and this is the way that I would teach sales training, is that I want people to say, wow, I've never heard it explained like that before, right? So example of that is I would have some canned things that I would spit out. Remember, like a politician, you show up, and in each conversation, there's 3 bombs, quote unquote, that you drop that you think is going to make them say, wow, I've never heard it explained like that before. And now I got to think a couple of examples, right? Just some stuff that here are some things that you hear me say all the time. Profit is the domino that knocks over all the other dominoes, right? You want to attract good staff. You want to retain good staff. You want to take a long vacation instead of a short vacation. You want to, go into multiple cities, multiple states, go across the nation. Where's that going to come from? If you don't have a profitable business, you'd be absolutely nuts to do that. Okay. So profit's the domino that knocks over all of those dominoes. Or I often say, you motivate an idiot, they do stupid things quicker. I think it was Jim Rohn that originally said that, but he said it in a slightly different way. But at the end of the day, you motivate an idiot, they do stupid things quicker. What do I mean? Well, Apple is debatably the most successful company of all time, right? On a cash basis. What do? They have very few products and services, and they only sell platinum, premium. They only have like premium pricing, right? So they got like they got Ferrari prices, and then they got Toyota numbers, right? Well, the average business owner, you motivate an idiot, they do stupid things quicker. What do? They add products and services. and then discount their fees. So they're going in the exact opposite direction of Apple and then wondering why it's not working out so well, right? So again, you motivate an idiot, they do stupid things quicker, and they'll tend to laugh when you say that. Another one you hear me say all the time, you can get lucky and make it, you can't get lucky and keep it. Or a real mentor can tell you what not to do, right? So any dum-dum can show up. Your to-do list. I'm not getting through my to-do list today. You're not getting through your to-do list today. Any dum-dum can come and expand an already too long to-do list, right? A real mentor can go to that and give them the friction points, tell them what not to do, to help them take 10 things and turn them into 3 instead of take 10 things and turn them into 13, right? So a real mentor can tell you what not to do. Another one you hear me say all the time, you want to build a business you could sell tomorrow, but don't want to. What is everybody else out there talking about? Exit, multiple, that kind of thing. My experience is if you're, talking to a legit business owner, they hear that, wow, okay, I've never heard it explained like that before. And that does sound like a sexy business and one that I would like to hold. And remember, old money equals never sell, right? The magic of Warren Buffett is he never sold. Gates, Bezos, Zuckerberg. What Zuckerberg got offered $1 billion to buy Facebook early on by Yahoo. What did he say? He goes, yeah, obviously we're not going to do this. And then just kept talking. And Peter Thiel, who is the first investor in Facebook, he's like, whoa. Like we should probably talk about this. And then you tell me if it worked out pretty well for him, obviously, right? Old money equals never sell. So really what you want to do is build a business you could sell tomorrow, but don't want to. You want to help your client build a business they could sell tomorrow, but don't want to. One of the hacks of doing that is bringing, young employees and children into the business. So that way you've got, succession built in. Another thing that comes to mind, like rather than optimize for an easy life, like rather than target an easy life, what you really want to do is target to be bothered by nothing, significantly higher level frame. You'd look for an easy life, and really what's going to happen is you're going to become, a non-interesting individual. I don't know, is that worded very well? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think optimizing for an easy life is the right frame. I don't think that's what God put us here for, right? I think we're all here to make an impact in a meaningful, positive way. So rather than, try and do less, it's like, well, no, I want to do more, but I want to be bothered by nothing. Imagine how awesome that would be, right? Surely that would have to be a Bezos and a Zuckerberg and, Elon Musk. They just keep rocking. They've got a higher level purpose and they just go, okay. Yeah, and things, no doubt some spaghetti sticks to the wall and they get a little bit frustrated. Look, they're human. It'd be crazy to think anything else, right? But at the end of the day, they couldn't be highly insecure. They just wouldn't have managed to do what they did. Like that reminds me of like people, they fear running out of money more than they do having a life that they're not proud of, right? So I think that's a bad frame. You should be wildly fearful of having a life that you're not proud of. I think that is, certainly motivating for me. I don't know about you, but that's motivating for me. That might be something that really resonates. And by the way, as I say this, what's really important is that you grab, kind of what I'm saying. And there's going to be things that are going to resonate and other things that just, you totally forget. Remember, to be valuable, you got to be memorable. The ones that are memorable are ones that are probably resonating, and you want to grab them, make them your own. And these are the types of bombs. These are the types of things that I'm saying. Like another thing, if you see, this podcast and my marketing and my daily email, you need to demonstrate consistency and discipline to attract people who are consistent and disciplined. And by the way, without spending 2 minutes with you, I know that your ideal clients are what? They're consistent and disciplined. These are the people that you want to attract. If you don't demonstrate the consistency and the discipline, you won't attract those folks the way that you want. And believe me, those are the folks that you want. You don't want the dog's breakfast and the folks that are totally out to lunch and, chasing shiny lights and squirrels, etc. You want consistent and disciplined people. Well, the best way to do that is to demonstrate consistency and discipline in your own world. Do you always show up to networking? Are you always giving? Are you always coming up with new stuff? Are you always bringing new deliverables? Are you doing your event on a consistent basis? Anyway, so that's what I would say. And this is, what does Naval Ravikant say? He says something to the effect of like, real intelligence or true intelligence is getting what you want. And then, by the way, very importantly, you got to want the right things. If you want the right things and then you get them, that's not going to fall under true intelligence, right? But true intelligence, real intelligence, is getting what it is that you desire, getting what it is that you actually set yourself out there to do. But you got to be careful. Before you decide on what you want, you need to reverse engineer it. That's the guy that wants to build an 8-figure business and he's got 3 kids under the age of 5 and realizes, this isn't exactly what I wanted. Now I don't get to watch my kids grow up and my wife's not speaking to me. And what do? They self-sabotage, right? So again, you gotta make sure that you're gunning in the right direction, and then you get it. You're an intelligent individual. I don't know. I could go on and on. I think with some, maybe, if you followed Facebook, or politics for that matter, but like stop being offended and you'll stop being so controllable, right? Or stop being offended and you stop being controllable, maybe is the way I want to say that. I don't think that needs an explanation, but there's people that are offended and they're on Facebook screaming and yelling. I don't need to spend 2 minutes with them. It's just nobody's changing their mind on Facebook. Right. And by the way, and if you want to put a point on, I'm not saying you shouldn't discuss this stuff on Facebook if that's your thing and that's what you want to do, but you got to do it in a controlled, emotionally intelligent way. Otherwise you just look like, the kid in the toy store not getting his toy, and throwing things around as his parents, kind of get upset, pick him up, throw him over the shoulder and go. And again, maybe this is related to, like wanting the right things. If you don't know what you want, there is no exit. And I would dare say, as I say that, I don't think you want to create a life, create a business, create a dynamic where you don't have, an exit ramp. That doesn't sound like a good time to me. So I think, again, just making sure that you're framing these things up, and maybe there's something that resonate, maybe there's not. Just go to things that are really meaningful for you, that again, when they hear it, they go, wow, I've never heard that explained like that before. Like you really took some thoughts, and moved me in a, small number of words. They're not going to say that to you, by the way, but this is what they're thinking. Consciously, even subconsciously, if you really do it well, and all of a sudden they get attracted to you, right? Again, attractive people, it's not about being good looking. It's like attractive people are people that people are attracted to, right? Like you got to walk in, you don't want to walk in like you want to buy it. You want to walk in like you own the place, right? Think the networking group. And maybe actually another, people admire effort more than they do success. Importantly, you're at the networking group, you're looking to impress these individuals, you want them to work with you at the same time. You don't want to come across too salesy, which no doubt that's pretty obvious. Talking about how hard you're working, how many hours you put into your book, many hours you put into your coaching program, how many hours you put into coaching elite entrepreneurs, etc. That they will be impressed by that far more so than your success. And by the way, I think there should be a combination of, think 80-20, but maybe it's 80% talking about effort and 20% success. And I think if you go to your networking function, you'll see a lot of people with those numbers flipped, where they're just talking success, as though this, just kind of, a big bag of money fell out of the sky on top of their head. And I don't think that's the frame. So you want to impress these folks. I got kind of Warren Buffett ringing in my ear. Like one of the things Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett would say is most business owners would incorrectly have you believe the world is driven by greed. And what they say, the world is actually driven by envy, right? And again, that's why business owners buy bigger houses, more houses, BMWs, Porsches, Like the problem with buying the Porsche, buying the Mercedes, buying the BMW is not the ticket price, despite the fact that it tends to be significantly more, in many cases double, right? But when you buy one of these cars, what you realize it's the ongoing expenses to maintain them. It's the tires, it's the oil change, it's the fender bender that inevitably happens. It's replacing the windshield. It's getting, the car tuned up on a regular basis, getting it maintained, getting it serviced. So I think what I'm trying to say there is if you want to influence business owners in a positive way, right? You can influence them in a negative way. That's a bad idea. You want to influence them in a positive way so that they start, building more meaningful type businesses, et cetera, and start, building businesses they could sell tomorrow but don't want to. I think that's a wildly positive frame. You want to make them envious of who you are and what you do, not what you have. Right? Just go to your Facebook profile, and I can tell you there's people there making that mistake all the time with their Lamborghinis and all that kind of junk. That's not the way I think you want to do it. If you want to attract the ideal clients that I described earlier, disciplined, consistent, growing, and the people that are going to work with you, not for 90 days and say this is too hard, but work for you, with you for 3 years and transform their business, transform their life, transform everything about what they're up to, and they have you to thank and do thank you. So if I were to translate that, I would say, like, you really want to work on your list of values, beliefs, your habits in order to make that happen, right? Communicate with that in mind. And then as I say that, like, what are your beliefs? What are your values? What are your habits, right? And do you show up every week to the networking group as a wild source of inspiration and knowledge, right? Like, do you prepare before the meeting? I guarantee you 99% of the folks do not spend 2 seconds preparing. Well, what if you were the person that prepared a little bit? Wouldn't that, could that make a meaningful difference? And use confidence and conviction as your superpower, right? Like a lion, you want to show up. You don't want to come in like you want to buy it. You want to show up like you own the place. A lion doesn't complain about the path ahead. What do? They walk with purpose. They bite stuff. They chase stuff. They're just generally scary. They're just organically, they're reminding those around them that not to mess with them. They're a bloody lion, right? Question is, are you that person to networking group, right? Like walk around with the groundedness of a grandfather is another. I don't know if maybe the groundedness of a grandfather, is that the same of a lion? I think that the two, I don't know, the two rhyme, right? But hopefully you can get the idea. You certainly want to be the person in the room with, conviction and confidence, is have that as your higher level frame. Like you want to be interesting. And what do interesting people do? They do interesting stuff. But then what do they do about that interesting stuff? They talk about it, right? If you don't talk about it, nobody knows that you're interesting. So what do? You got to tell stories. My question is it when you go to the networking function, is that the first time you're telling the story? What I said a minute ago, like getting prepared could be a really good idea, and practicing those stories. Remember, every story's got, my daughter wants to be an actress, right? So I'm trying to explain to her that you want to be an actress. One of the things you want to think about doing is, creating your own series. Because then, like, Sly Stallone, you get to decide who gets the starring role, and guess who she's going to choose? Her, right? Well, every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the middle is conflict, right? There is no story without conflict. Every episode of Seinfeld, every episode of Friends, every episode of Three is Company, depending upon your age and where you're at, right? I just watched the Beast Games, which, by the way, it's unreal. Okay, but it's all just conflict, everything going wrong, open loops all over the place, right? So what Mr. Beast is a master. If you really break it down, the guy is a master at telling stories. And no doubt he's got some people around him that are also masters of telling stories. They get together and they practice this stuff, and it doesn't happen by accident. Big Brother, The Bachelor, Survivor, it's all the same. It's all rooted in conflict. Question is, so you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'm not talking about like a 10-minute story. You can spit that out really, really quickly. And by the way, maybe you want to practice a little bit, right? So yeah, I don't know, that impressing people. I don't know. That's, like, don't see the world as it is and say why, see the world as it could be and say why not, right? 90% of businesses do not need to fail, right? But what do the numbers say? Exactly that. 90% ultimately fall over. 80% are gone in 5 years. Profit's a domino that knocks over all the other dominoes. Let's go combat that. Again, I've built an operating system. It is wildly profitable. It is step by step. It is cookie cutter. It's ABC 1, 2, 3, paint by numbers. And it's really, really straightforward. And the numbers are just gobsmacking. It's all built on compounding. So you get small incremental improvements in multiple areas simultaneously, and you get this compounding financial return without the use of time, right? But the average coach, the average business owner, they're using coffee for energy. But the 7-figure coach, the 7-figure operator, the 8-figure operator, look, they're using their dreams and their vision as motivation, right? And again, for a business coach, that's helping business owners and combating those stats. Like I hear those stats that 90% of businesses fail, and keep in mind, I've been doing this a long, long time, literally decades. Like I know for a fact it does not need to be like this, right? But what do? They get in their own way. They lower their prices. They add products and services. They go in the wrong direction, enthusiastically looking for a sunset. And it just doesn't need to be that way, right? And then I would ask you just like, so forget me, what about you? Like, what is your dream? And do you have a monster one that you are working towards? And I got to tell you, as I say that, if you don't have something, like it's the most famous speech of all time, right? Started with 4 words. I have a dream. He didn't say I have a step-by-step plan, right? Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. And by the way, once you have that, how often do you want to say it? And the answer is on repeat, repeatedly. Next to every single time you speak to somebody, you spit it out in a meaningful way. Like, what's your why? If your why, it doesn't make you cry, we got to probably keep going, right? And believe me, you don't become a business coach and not have a really, really powerful why. Okay, so that's what I would say. Impress them. Just 3 bombs and you drop them repeatedly is really important. Learn to tell stories. And again, a story has got a beginning, it's got a middle, and it's got an end. Create that. And again, it can be said in, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, very comfortably. And if you want to be valuable, you got to be memorable, and you can't be valuable if you're not memorable. So say things that are a little bit different than the average bear. Vanilla is wildly unprofitable. Let's just say that. Okay. Back to questions. He's got a question from me. Would you agree consistency is the key to success? And talk to us about that. All right. Well, I mean, hopefully I don't even need to answer that hard yes. I just tell you what my opinion, what kills more business coaching dreams than, I'm going to call them bad beats, ever could. And believe me, I've had my share of bad beats. It would be, if I put it in 2 words, divided energy, right? You got to get focused. Success does not belong to the lucky. It belongs to the focused. Opportunities and clients show up. They don't show up when you want. They show up when you're ready. So my question for you would be, are you ready? The truth is, introduce me to a business coach with a lack of leads, and I'll introduce you to a business coach with a lack of confidence, right? Why do you have a lack of confidence? Because you haven't done the hard work. You haven't learned the operating system. You haven't learned you haven't done the training, right? Like a professional athlete, you got to spend some time in the gym to get yourself ready. So when they show up, you are ready. You ask me, how do I do that? Real simple. I gave this as homework for 2 decades. Choose a niche. Okay. Let's call it a restaurant. You go, okay, well, how are you going to impact a restaurant? Pen, paper. I think that's way more powerful than an iPad, but I'll leave it with you. But write down 50 ways that you will make a meaningful impact on the local restaurant. Once you've done that, I think you're going to find you're going to be so excited, so dialed in that those restaurants are magically going to find you. How are they going to find you? You're going to contact the banker. You're going to contact the business broker. You're going to contact the graphic designer, the web designer. all the different JV type folks, and the people who supply the restaurant, right? They got to buy the lettuce and the carrots and the the beef and the chicken, etc., from somebody. Speak to them, and all of a sudden, these clients will show up. But I think that will help you in your readiness, right? And then, by the way, let's go ready. Like, it's preparedness, it's focus. Frankly, it's faith. Like, do you really believe? It's skills, determination, consistency, discipline, like I talked about. Um, like, you're going to get, if you're a business coach, let me tell you, you probably already know this, but you're going to get beaten up a little bit, right? Like, hold hope even when the world feels like it's laughing at you. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit harsh, but you know what I mean? You ever felt like that? I certainly have. You know what? It feels like it's laughing at you or it's working against you. What do you got to do? You just got to act boldly with your business coaching purpose in mind that I mentioned a minute ago. Like, what is that higher level purpose that is driving you? Like, 90% of businesses fail. Do you know what happens when a business fails? It doesn't just wake up one day and it fails. I'm talking like this is a 12, 18 month, 2 year slide that is just a nightmare. Mom, dad are not showing up at the highest level. They're not showing up as a husband. They're not showing up as a wife. They're not showing up as a parent. They're not showing up as a friend. They're not showing up for themselves. They're not showing up for their community. They're not showing up for their church. They're not showing up for their friends and family, right? So that, you know what I mean? That make your eyes water. It's like that is 90% of them fall over ultimately. 80% are wiped out within 5 years. That's not an opinion. Like, these are the hard numbers, right? So you gotta be rooted in clarity that just can't be shaken, right? Like, the deeper your roots, the stronger you are. Just think of a tree, right? And by the way, I've done this for 20 years, right? But I can tell you that I could, as an example, I could get, let's call them no's. Okay. It's not like, I'm not doing sales, but like I could be, and I'm not too good to not do sales. That's for darn sure. But I could get like 10 no's in a row. No, Carl, I don't want to join focus.com. I don't want to use the operating system. It doesn't make any sense. Blah, 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 blah. Well, I'll tell you, I could very comfortably get 10 no's in a row. That's not going to happen this day and age, but let's just assume it could or did. On the 11th call, I will show up with the same level of confidence, the same level of conviction, the same level of intestinal fortitude, and I would get that deal done. Like, I would not be shaken one iota. Why? Because my roots are 20 plus years deep, right? And remember, the magic of coaching is the margins. Like, you pull it off and you go get your 5, 10, 15 clients, 20 clients. You were semi-retired for the rest of your life. Live where you want, do what you want, make calls from the beach, and the margins are just insane. We play with 80% margins, and the landscaper and the roofer, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, they play with 10 to 20. So yeah, consistency. It's just, I don't know. I think that's what I would say. Well, I tell you, I think people want to change, right? So business coaches say they want to change, but what they really want is relief, right? Is that does that resonate? Like, they say they want to change. You say you want to change. I say I want to change, but is what we really want is relief. Remember I said earlier, you don't want to optimize for an easy life. You want to optimize for not being bothered by anything, right? I would say every business coach has 2 lives. I certainly have. Every business coach has got 2 lives, and it's the one they're, let's call it, living, and the one that they're capable of living, right? It's a choice to commit to what you're doing, or commit to, what that you can do, and who you can possibly become, right? And the impact that you could potentially have, the positive, you could have a negative impact, the positive impact that you could ultimately have, not by pretending to be strong, by demonstrating it to yourself, and then demonstrating it to the folks around you, including your wife, including your husband, including your kids. But most importantly, you got to demonstrate it to yourself, because keeping your word to yourself is the best way for you to build confidence, right? So what do? Make a goal to send out 25 messages every day. And then what do you got to do? You got to follow through, right? What if you don't follow through? You're going to lose confidence. If you do follow through, you're going to gain confidence, even if you don't get the clients, and they might not magically show up. In fact, I can almost guarantee they're not going to magically show up on the first or second day. Why? I would come back to what I said a minute ago. Maybe you're not quite ready, but once you've done this consistently and demonstrated discipline, and you've done your homework and you've done your training and you've got something like an operating system that you can install, I think you'd be dangerous, right? You get better and stronger as you send those messages out, right? And coaching clients, they just kind of show up. Why? Because you're demonstrating that you're ready. Who you demonstrating it to? Again, yourself, but I would dare say more importantly, the universe, right? Like regret and mediocrity are always more expensive than discipline and the consistency, right? Not to mention more painful. There is no honor in staying the same and then keeping what I would call the old you in place. There is no honor in that. You don't transform by hoping, you change by working, right? And by the way, working is a privilege many others do not have, right? They can't talk, they can't walk, can't get out of bed because they're sick. They die to have the opportunity in front of you to make a meaningful difference. Okay. And as I say that, I want like context is everything, right? To the man with no shoes meets the man with no legs, right? Is like, okay, hang on a minute. I think I can handle a few calluses on my feet. And so I talked about a number of times over the last month, roughly, like your identity, right? Like let's call it your business coaching identity is going to shift with that level of hard work, consistency, and discipline, right? Albeit slowly, but methodically and irreversibly, right? You become your new your new you. And what do? You never go back. It's like building blocks that just cannot come down, like a really strong and impressive building in, downtown in the city, right? Your growth is irreversible. Like how amazing is that? Like people ask me all the time, and then by the way, I am not the best example of this by any stretch of the imagination. There's people out there doing 1,000-fold what I am doing, and I'm okay with that, by the way, right? But people ask me all the time, like I show up with my daily email and, the podcast is consistent and, with my coaching, it's consistent. My daily jokes that some people like and some people think I'm a total idiot. And that's okay, by the way. My goal is not to be vanilla. And trust me, it is not easy at times. Believe me, like I'm not short on things to do. I have got a big team. I've got a big company. I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. They're accountants and business coaches and consultants and business brokers and, you name it. They're all around the world in all different time zones. I'm building out new software like my AI business coaching dojo. I've got AI Coach Assist dialed in like I've never had it dialed in. I've obviously built profit acceleration software. I built digital acceleration software. I'm building my new non-franchise franchise that I can't begin to tell you how excited I am. But I got the team deploying and developing that, which the AI, the business coaching dojo was kind of like the sandbox for this project, which is a meaningful one. And I can't begin to tell you how excited I am. But at the end of the day, I push consistency and discipline while I'm demonstrating it, or I'd like to think so, right? Like my marketing helps my audience show up at a higher level, right? So I demonstrate the thing that I want people to come to me for, right? Every single day, helping people without fail, with a little bit of humor built in, hopefully. The goal is to have a good life, right? I'm trying to help people and show people how to have a good life. And you can do it with discipline and consistency and some hard work that I absolutely do. Right? You want to make people envious of what you are and who you are, not what you have. I don't know. Go look at my stuff over the last, show me where I'm talking about my houses. Show me where I'm talking about my cars. Show me where I'm talking about that stuff. That's just not, frankly, yeah, that's just not who I am and what I am. You're just not going to see it. And by the way, if I put is there a photo somewhere of me in an impressive car? Yeah, I'm sure there is, right? Normally it's going to be somebody else tagging me, by the way. And then I immediately go, hey, could you untag me? It's not my thing. But anyway, and by the way, not in any way, there are better examples of, me in this by 100 miles. But the bottom line, and maybe what I'm trying to bring across here, and I'm hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down, demonstrate consistency in your marketing and business, and you will attract the consistent and disciplined coaching clients that I think you're looking for, right? So how do you do that? Demonstrate. You're going to do a weekly live event every week for 52 weeks, come hell or high water. 2 people show up, the event goes on. 20 people show up, and you got to bring in some extra chairs. The show goes on, right? Well, what's going to happen? The accountant types and the analytical types and the consistent types and the discipline types and the guys building 7-figure business, 8-figure business, guess what's going to end up happening? They will end up seeking you out. Will they do that immediately? No. There's a saying, I think it's a Chinese proverb, but like, you get what you deserve in a roundabout way, right? Well, there's a debate to say if you've only done 3 events, you don't deserve the 8-figure business yet. You do 52 events in a row, and guess what? I think you deserve that client. So there you go. There you go. He's got a couple other questions. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do one more. A business coach wrote in a business with high revenue and low profit. He wants me to help them. Okay. So high revenue, low profit, guide them. Okay. First of all, higher level frame. In all cases, remember, McDonald's operate off of an operating system. They could spend as much money on burgers, fries, Coca-Cola, etc. as they want. But it's not that they don't spend an extra dollar. They don't spend an extra penny on French fries or burgers or Coca-Cola that they don't need to. Why? It's part of their operating system, right? Well, and they could spend as much money on French fries and their P&L would literally not be almost affected, right? Like the naked eye would not even notice, but they don't do it. It's an operating system. Guess what the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, the landscaping business, the roofing company, the client that you're trying to attract, the folks at the networking group are not doing. They're not doing that. So how do we manage expenses and just a frame? Remember, I go into each individual, itemize it. They need to be itemized. And they're going to be like semi-itemized, but you want like every single expense right there. And I ask 2 questions. Does it get a client? Does it keep a client? Does it get a client? Does it keep a client? Does it get a client? Does it keep a client? And the answer is not yes. Guess what we do? In some cases, it's going to stay, but it needs a story and a reason. In many cases, it's just going to go. And remember, if you have 20% net margins and you make $1, how much do you keep? 20 cents. When I save you $1, how much do you keep? And the answer is 100 cents. So if you are a coach at $2,000 a month, 24 grand a year, and you might be 12 grand and you might be 5 grand a month, 60 grand a year, or even above, you want to make your fees, you want to cover your fees as quickly as possible. No doubt that's obvious. Well, guess where I would do it? Would I go to growing revenues or would I go to controlling expenses first? And of course I would do both, but you could find your coaching fees just looking at their P&L, looking at their expenses, looking at their credit card statements without, on an annualized basis. You could literally do that in the first 30 days with them. And believe me, they're not doing this. But anyways, so that's a higher level frame. Also, okay, before I answer this, if you've got what would even be more common is a business with high profits and low on cash. I can tell you that cash is in 5 areas every time. And it's in the revenues, it's in expenses, it's in inventory, it's in accounts receivables, it's in accounts payable, right? So you've got a business high on profits, low on cash. That is a great client to pick up, by the way, which is why I want to say it. Again, it's revenues, expenses, inventory, accounts payable, accounts receivable. The money will always be there. Okay, so let me answer this. High revenue, low profit business. Look, a business with high revenue but low profit, it's probably experiencing margin erosion, where the costs of generating a sale is nearly as high as the sale itself, right? Like in this day and age, this is more and more common because of elevated operating expenses. Think tariffs, think fuel, think tax, think inflation. Like the average business doesn't pass that increase onto their customers. Why? Because they don't have an operating system, by the way. Like they don't update their pricing, and that is crazy, right? So also weak pricing strategy, just simply put, making their prices too low. Why do they do that? Because they're trying to stay competitive. Or they just failed to review this, like what I just talked about, like inflation and whatnot. And so even with high sales volume, which is where they get confused, right? The per unit profit is so small. It doesn't cover the rest of the business. This is in life and in business expense creep. That's just like your operating expenses. You got overheads, think rent. You got bloated staff numbers, right? Why do you have that? Mismanagement and not, you know what I mean? Not, what does a leader do? Like in some cases, you just got to cut things, right? Namely people. Am I suggesting that you should go cut a bunch of staff, or your clients should go cut up all their staff? That's not what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, my question is, how productive are they? How efficient are they? How much value are they bringing to the business? Well, if they're not, something you got to look at. In this day and age, I found like unused software subscriptions. What do? They just eat into margins. So I'd be looking at that. In some businesses, they got like 3 CRMs running at once, right? Got 3. The problem with that, so the subscription expense, right? But it's also just looking in 3 different places. It's just convoluted, inefficient. And then you need staff to be able to go back and forth. And no doubt it's just inefficiencies, and not to mention the errors in business tend to be expensive. Just cost of goods sold, COGS, just inefficiency in production. Think wasted materials, things like scrap. Really important one, failing to renegotiate with suppliers assuming volume increases. That's something they don't have an operating system, so they don't do it. Next thing you know, 3 years passes, and it's like, what the heck's going on here? Another one, I think Amazon kind of make this famous, but like reinvest. Like I'm going to call this aggressive reinvestment. Think Salesforce, think Amazon, think Tesla, think Nvidia, right? Like these companies, they choose to have low profits by spending an absolute bucket load on research, development, marketing, and, improving their infrastructure. Why? To get, increase, and capture, I'm going to say, market share, right? The average business just can't do this effectively, right? Some cases they can, and that would be bad advice for somebody who is, really got something special and, really going to corner the market. But let's face it, we're dealing with the roofer whose goal is to have a great life, watch his kids grow up, watch her kids grow up, etc. Thinking that they should be aggressively reinvesting would be something that I would, it needs a story. It needs a reason. It needs some, you need some high level thought, need some discernment. What else would I say? High cost of client acquisition, just spending heavily on marketing. Why are they doing that? They're trying to bring in new customers. Could be, pretty obvious. But then my question is it a single purchase, or is it an ongoing purchase, right? Lifetime value of a client is critical as you look at cost of client acquisition. Repeat business equals profit, right? They need to create ongoing clients. If they don't have a back-end model where they get repeat clients, they don't own a business, they own a promotion, right? So you want to help them create a model where the sales are semi-automatic. And by the way, that is going to take some TLC and some adjustment, starting with their psychology, like some Jedi mind tricks. They should absolutely have that. But often, folks in this day and age, and Facebook and all the different, everybody wants to, get all their clients online, right? There's a debate to say that they could do all of that, and it depends on the business, but just kick it old school, go get a baseball team that needs money and then give them 1,000 flyers with your client's thing and get those kids to go and door knock and then pay the team. And then that's fundraising, and they're doing a little bit of work, and the kids are going to have a little bit of fun, and the parents will manage it for you. Or, just direct mail is kind of what I'm describing there, but I'm talking like door hanger type stuff. It can be very, very effective, just kicking it old school. Your old school style businesses trying to do everything online, the truth is it can be expensive. And then if it works, it's amazing. The problem is it doesn't work a good percentage of the time. And again, it's not just the money, it's the bandwidth, it's the time, it's the focus, it's the resources. It's everybody trying to work out Facebook. So if they're trying to do that, they're not spending their time doing the other stuff, which would bring me to like inefficiencies within their operations, right? Like, I don't know, lack of updated. My background's in franchising, which ultimately is just step-by-step instruction on how to do something. You've got a marketing manual, you got an operations manual, pretty straightforward. Again, it's ABC 1, 2, 3, paint by numbers. Lack of updating their processes on a regular basis. Just think, doing things manually. The labor that goes into that, and just having manual workflows versus using automation that you can do in this day and age very, very comfortably. Not even take AI out of it, just, with, CRMs and some of the, the management programs are incredibly good nowadays. They could bring that, they could be significantly more efficient on average if they got with the times. But they've been running the business for 15 years. And what do they like to do? They like to do it the way they've always done it, or even just, high labor costs, per unit of revenue. One of the most powerful things you can do with the P&L is to common size it, where basically you just take a percentage. Like if you've got $1 million of revenue and then your rent's $100,000, then a common size P&L would look like 10% instead of the number. And just, what I mean? Working out exactly how much, is labor cost, costing the company in order to bring in X dollar of revenue. So I'd want to know that ratio, and they got to keep that under control. Anywho, I think probably some other stuff I could go there, but if you've got a business that's high revenue, low profit, that's where I would be looking. And by the way, is the reason Road Dogg asked that one. That's a really good client for you. Or again, a client with high profits and low cash can be a magical client for you. And remember, if you got a client that's high in profits and low on cash, revenues, expenses, accounts receivable, inventory, and accounts payable, always in those 5 areas. Anyways, okay, that's all I got. We will look forward to seeing you next week. I'll be here with my boy Road Dogg, and maybe look, progress equals happiness. I'll end it the way Road Dogg always does. But again, just what is that higher level power? What is driving you? What are your 3 bombs that you are going to drop in every single conversation? Why do you do this? And again, as I ask that, you probably got like a okay answer. My question is like, maybe, and I could be wrong, but go a little bit deeper and find your inner why. Why are you doing all this? Be very, very powerful use of time. And the homework that I gave you earlier, what does Road Dogg do? He says, give me the one thing that I'm going to task you with is pick a niche. You're going to go landscapers. You're going to go roofers, butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, the restaurant, whoever it's going to be. I want you to write down 50 ways that you are going to help that particular client. And then let me know, are you able, all of a sudden, are you going to be 10 times more enthusiastic to go find that restaurant, find that landscaper, etc.? My experience is absolutely. So there's your one thing, and there's your homework. Until next week, have a great one, and we'll speak to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.